In the darkest hour of the night, in the very heart of the storm, 12 men in a boat were waiting to die. Waves were tearing the boat apart. The wind was screaming. Darkness had swallowed everything. And in that moment a man appeared, walking on the water. Step by step. On top of the waves. As if on solid stone. As if on dry earth. The storm couldn't shake him. The water couldn't sink him. The darkness couldn't hide him. The men in the boat screamed, "Ghost!" But it wasn't a ghost. It was Jesus. And then one man jumped from the boat. Into the heart of the storm. Onto the waves. And he too began to walk. On the water. A fisherman. An ordinary man. Walking on the impossible. Until he looked down. Until he saw the waves. And he began to sink. This story isn't about walking. This story is about sinking. And about a hand that reaches out when you're going under. Jesus walks on water. Come. That day, everything was different. Hours before sunset, Jesus sat on a hillside looking out at thousands of people. The northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Green grass, a gentle breeze, the glimmering water surface in the distance. And before him thousands upon thousands. 5,000 men. Not counting women and children, perhaps 15,000, perhaps 20,000 people. All hungry. All exhausted. All of them had walked for hours just to hear him speak. The disciples were worried. "Send them away," they said. "Let them go to the villages and buy food. There's nothing here." Jesus looked at them. "You give them something to eat." The disciples exchanged glances. "Did we hear that right? How do we feed 5,000 people?" Philip did the math. 8 months' wages wouldn't buy enough bread. 8 months' wages. Not enough. And in that moment, Andrew stepped forward. He had a boy with him. A small child. In his hands, a basket. Inside the basket 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. 5 loaves. 2 fish. 20,000 people. The cruelest equation mathematics has ever known. But Jesus took that bread. He looked up to heaven. He gave thanks. And he began to break it. And the bread did not run out. The more he broke, the more there was. The more he gave, the more it multiplied. The disciples carried basket after basket, and every time they came back, the baskets were full again. 5,000 people ate. Everyone was satisfied. And 12 baskets of leftovers remained. The crowd went wild. "This man is a prophet. This man should be king. This man will overthrow Rome, he'll save Israel." People leapt to their feet. A movement surged, spontaneous, uncontrolled, fiery. They would make him king by force. They would crown him. They would carry him on their shoulders and march to Jerusalem. And Jesus at exactly this point stopped everything. Because Jesus's kingdom was not a kingdom that came by the sword. His crown would be a cross. His throne would be a crucifixion. And no one understood that yet. He turned to his disciples, his voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. "Get in the boat. Cross to the other side. Now." "But Lord, the crowd, the miracle, everyone is here. Now. The disciples obeyed. They got in the boat. They took up the oars. They pushed off from shore. Behind them, the murmur of the crowd, before them, the darkening surface of the Sea of Galilee. And Jesus went up the mountain, alone, to pray. The world was offering him power. The crowd was saying, "Be king." The same thing Satan had offered in the wilderness, "I will give you all the kingdoms," was now coming from thousands of mouths. And what did Jesus do? He climbed the mountain. He knelt. He talked to his Father. Because Jesus drew his strength not from crowds but from silence. Not from applause but from prayer. Not from people calling him king but from the Father calling him son. Meanwhile, in the middle of the lake, hell had broken loose. The Sea of Galilee had a characteristic that made even experienced fishermen shudder: its storms came without warning. The lake sat in a massive basin 200 meters below sea level, wedged between mountains. During the day, the sun heated the water's surface, causing warm air to rise. But at night, freezing air currents would pour down through the mountain passes. When the warm water surface collided with the cold mountain air storm, suddenly, mercilessly, within seconds, glass-smooth water would transform into a monster. This night, that's exactly what happened. First came the wind. It started light, a breeze that tossed hair, lifted the edges of garments. But within minutes it grew. It howled. It began to scream. When the ice-cold air rushing down from the mountain passes slammed into the lake's surface, the water erupted. The waves started small. 0.5 meter. 1 meter. Then an explosion. 2 meters. 3 meters. Massive walls of water that crested over the boat's sides, flooding the hull, making the wooden frame groan and crack. The boat was small. 7, maybe 8 meters. Wood. Single-sailed, but raising the sail in this wind was suicide. They'd already taken it down. They were pulling at the oars. But the wind was against them. With every stroke they gained a meter and the waves dragged them back 3. The cruelty of mathematics again, they were rowing forward but actually moving backward. 12 men were in that boat. Peter, Andrew, James, John. 4 experienced fishermen. Born on this lake, raised in these waters, men who had earned their living fighting these very waves. And these men were afraid. Don't miss this detail. If professional fishermen who had spent their entire lives on this lake were experiencing mortal fear, this was no ordinary storm. This was a death storm. Mark tells us that Jesus saw them straining at the oars from the mountain, from the darkness, from kilometers away. He saw them. But he didn't come immediately. Hours passed. The first watch, 6 in the evening to 9, the storm was beginning. The second watch, 9 to midnight. The storm was intensifying. The third watch, midnight to 3 in the morning. The storm was at its peak. 6 hours. For 6 hours these men fought death in the darkness, in the storm, in the waves. For 6 hours their arms ached, their hands blistered, their muscles burned, their lungs filled with salt water and freezing air. For 6 hours every wave felt like this is the last one. And Jesus for 6 hours did not come. He was on the mountain. He was praying. He could see them but he didn't come. Why? Because sometimes God sends you into the storm. The one who ordered you into the boat is the same one who knew the storm was coming. He knew. And he sent you anyway. Not to punish you. To prepare you for something. The disciples were going to learn something that night that couldn't be learned without 6 hours in a storm. But they didn't know yet what they were about to learn. They were just trying to survive. The fourth watch of the night. 3 to 6 in the morning. Just before dawn. The darkest, coldest, most hopeless hour of the night. The hour when darkness stops saying maybe it'll end and the body begins to surrender and the mind arrives at the conclusion, we're not going to make it. The oars had grown heavy. Some had given up rowing. What was the point? The wind was stronger than them. The lake was bigger than them. The darkness was more patient than them. And in that moment, someone saw something. On the surface of the water. In the darkness, but in the momentary flash of lightning, or squinting hard through the spray, something was there. A figure. A human shape. But on the water's surface. On top of the water. Walking. The first to see it, probably John, the one with the sharpest eyes, couldn't make a sound. He rubbed his eyes. Salt water. Exhaustion. Hallucination. He looked again. It was still there. And it was getting closer. Look over there. Heads turned. Eyes squinted. And everyone saw it. A figure. On the water. Step by step. Waves passed beneath his feet but couldn't sink him. Wind whipped his hair but couldn't stop him. A silhouette in the darkness, but more than a silhouette. A moving, approaching presence that refused to obey the rules of water. Ghost. The scream spread instantly. One person shouted, then everyone shouted. In that era, there was a widespread belief among sailors ghosts seen at sea at night were harbingers of death. If a spirit was walking on the water, it meant you were about to go down. The men screamed. Some dropped their oars. Some curled up in the bottom of the boat. Peter the warrior, the brave one, even he pulled back. Fear had seized everything. The storm was bad. But the storm was a known enemy. This was the unknown. And the unknown is always more terrifying than the known. And from that figure came a voice. Through the howling of the storm. Over the shriek of the wind, cutting through the roar of the waves. A voice clear, calm, undeniable, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. It is I. In Greek, ego eimi. These two words were not an ordinary introduction. This was the name God had spoken to Moses from the burning bush. I am who I am. Existence itself. Beyond time, beyond space, beyond the reach of death, absolute being. And now this name in the middle of a storm, on top of the water, in the darkest hour of the night, was being spoken to 12 fishermen. It is I. I am in the middle of the storm, it is I. I am on top of the waves, it is I. I am inside the darkness, it is I. And don't be afraid. Because the one who created the storm, it is I. The one who laid out the water, it is I. The one who designed the night, it is I. And right now the one coming to you, it is I. The voice was familiar. It was Jesus's voice. But how was he on the water? The human body sinks in water. This is an indisputable law of physics. Gravity doesn't discriminate. Water is liquid and liquid doesn't support. This is universal, unchangeable, unarguable fact. And this man was defying that fact. As if water had applied different rules for him. As if gravity had made an agreement with him. As if the laws of the universe had recognized him and stepped aside. Because he was the one who wrote those laws. The disciples froze. Fear transformed into shock. Shock into wonder. Wonder into something else. And here is where Peter entered the scene. Peter. You know him by now. The man who appears in every one of our stories. Always the first to speak. Always the first to leap. His mouth always one step ahead of his brain, his heart always one step ahead of his logic. The man who displayed either incredible courage or incredible foolishness, most often both in the same second. Peter heard Jesus's voice. He saw the figure. And in his mind, that chaotic, impulsive, magnificent mind, a thought formed. A thought that would never have occurred to any of the other 11 disciples. A thought that could only have come from Peter's head. Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. Stop time. Absorb this sentence. The storm is raging. Waves are 3 meters high. Night. Darkness. Cold. The boat is rocking. Water is coming from every direction. And this man, this fisherman, who has spent his life on this lake, who has known for years what water is, what storms do, what depth means, is saying, command me. Let me come too. On the water. 11 other men were in that boat. 11 other men saw Jesus. 11 other men heard the voice. And all 11 stayed in the boat. All 11 did the logical thing. All 11 stayed on the safe side. But Peter didn't want to be safe. Peter wanted to be where Jesus was. And if Jesus was on the water, then Peter had to be on the water too. No matter what logic said. No matter what physics said, no matter how big the storm was. If it is you, this wasn't doubt. It was a conditional declaration of faith. If it's really you and the voice sounds like you, the figure looks like you, but I want to be certain, command me. Because if your command is there, the water will hold me too. If your word is there, the storm can't break me either. And Jesus's answer was the shortest, most powerful, most courage-giving single word in human history: come. Come. No explanation. No instructions. No first do this, check your faith level, make sure you're ready, none of it. Nothing. Come. One word. An invitation and a command. A promise and a guarantee. To say come was to say the water will hold you. To say come was to say you won't sink. To say come was to say I am here, and while I am here, no wave can swallow you. But at the same time, come meant get out of the boat. And getting out of the boat meant leaving what was safe. Leaving what was known. Leaving the things you could control. Come is both a promise and a risk. And Jesus always offers both together. Peter stood up. The boat was rocking. Left, right, forward, back, up, down. He grabbed the side to find his balance. His knees were trembling from the cold, from fear, from excitement, perhaps all three. The other disciples stared at him. Their eyes were wide as saucers. What was this man doing? Had he lost his mind in the middle of a storm, in the darkness of night, surrounded by waves? Was he getting out of the boat? Peter walked to the edge. With every step the boat swayed. He gripped the side. His fingers squeezed the wood, that familiar, safe, solid wood. He looked down. Water. Black. Cold. Deep. The Sea of Galilee reached depths of 40 meters in some places. 40 meters of dark, freezing water. If you fell into this water at night, in a storm you had minutes. Cold water paralyzes the body. Muscles refuse to work. Lungs constrict. Panic sets in. And in the darkness you can't tell which way is up and which way is down. You sank. Peter knew all of this. He had spent his life on this lake. He may have lost friends to this water. He knew what water was, that beautiful, life-giving, simultaneously lethal water. He knew it down to his bones. And despite that knowledge, alongside that knowledge, standing directly in the face of that knowledge, he swung his leg over the side of the boat. 1 foot in the boat. 1 foot in the air. Behind him, 11 pairs of eyes, breath held, watching. Before him Jesus, walking on the water, waiting. Below him 30 centimeters down, black, cold, lethal water. And Peter stepped out. His foot touched the water. And the water, that liquid, that fluid, that substance which according to Newton's laws could not possibly support a human being, became firm. It didn't become solid, it was still liquid. Still moving. Still waving beneath him. But it supported. Like a resilient surface, like a thick sheet of ice, but it wasn't ice, it was water. Warm, salty, moving water. And Peter's foot was standing on top of it. He paused for a moment. He looked at his foot. He looked at the water. His brain was screaming, this is impossible. But his foot wasn't sinking. And Jesus had said, come. Second step. The other foot pressed onto the water. Both feet on the surface. He released his hands from the side. He was no longer holding onto anything. Not wood. Not rope. Not any known security. Only water. And the word come. And he began to walk. Peter was walking on water. A fisherman. A Galilean fisherman. No university education. No theological training. Not a prophet. Not an angel. Not the Son of God. An ordinary, impulsive, big-mouthed, even bigger-hearted man. And he was walking on water. 1 step. 2. 3. 4. With each step the water held him. With each step the laws of physics were suspended for this one man, for this one moment. With each step the laws of the universe were saying, normally you would sink. But the person who called you is the one who wrote these laws. And he said, come. So walk. His eyes were on Jesus. This detail is everything. His eyes were on Jesus. He wasn't looking at the waves. He wasn't looking at the storm. He wasn't looking at the darkness. He wasn't even looking at his own feet walking on water. he was looking only at Jesus. And as long as he looked at Jesus, the water held him. 5 steps. 6. 7. The water was cold beneath his feet but steady. The wind struck his face but couldn't topple him. A wave came, it passed beneath him, maybe soaked him, but it didn't embrace him, didn't grip him, didn't swallow him. Jesus was a few meters ahead. Getting closer. With every step, a little nearer. He could see Jesus's face now, even in the darkness. Somehow, he could see that face. And in that face there was no fear. No worry. No "I wonder if he'll make it" hesitation. In Jesus's face there was only calm, deep, unshakable certainty. Come. You're coming. You're walking. Keep going. And Peter walked. 8th step. 9th. This was working. Really, insanely, inexplicably working. And then that moment. A wave came. Bigger than the others. Maybe 2.5 meters. Maybe 3. From Peter's left side at the edge of his peripheral vision, a massive, black, foaming wall of water was approaching. Reflex. The oldest, most powerful, most uncontrollable program in the human brain. Detect danger, turn your head, look. Peter looked. He took his eyes off Jesus. Only for an instant. Maybe half a second. Maybe not even a full second. His pupils sliding from Jesus's face to the crest of the wave, that's all. And he saw. He truly saw the wave. Until that moment, the waves had been background, they existed but didn't matter. Jesus's face was in the foreground, and next to Jesus's face no wave was significant. But now the wave had moved to the foreground, and the wave was enormous. And behind it, another one. And behind that, another. Endless, dark, furious walls of water, one after another, stretching to the boat, to the shore, to the horizon. And the wind. That wind which, while he was looking at Jesus, had felt like nothing more than a breeze grazing his face, now hit him like a fist. Cold. Sharp. Merciless. And he looked down. He looked at his feet. And he saw. He was standing on the water. He was on the water. This was impossible. This couldn't be. This defied everything. 30 years of fishing experience, a lifetime of hundreds of nights spent on this lake, a body that knew what water was, all of it screamed simultaneously, this cannot be. You cannot float. You cannot swim like this. You cannot walk on water. And the rational part of his brain, the part that had been silent for minutes, 4 steps, suppressed by faith, covered by the word come, seized control in an instant. And Peter's last thought, the last thought before his feet began to sink beneath the surface, was this: what am I doing? Fear. It slammed into his chest. Like a physical, concrete, breath-stealing blow. It clenched his heart. It twisted his stomach. It buckled his knees. And faith, that faith which had brought him out of the boat, which had walked him across the water, which had carried him step by step toward Jesus, that faith receded. Like a wave pulling back from shore. And what it left behind was emptiness. Filled with fear. Empty of faith. Peter began to sink. First his ankles. Water wrapped around his feet, cold, wet, real. That firmness was gone. Water was liquid again. Water was water again. And water sinks people to his knees. The water was rising fast. Or he was sinking fast, it was the same thing. Cold wrapped around his legs. His muscles seized. It bored into his bones. To his waist. A wave came straight into his face. Salt water flooded his mouth, his nose. He coughed. He spat. He tried to breathe, but another wave came to his chest. He was flailing his arms. The water was pulling him down, deep, into the darkness. His weight was devouring him. His lungs were compressing. The cold was freezing every thought, every plan, every solution, leaving only one single truth: I'm dying. To his throat. Water touched his chin. The next wave would cover him. The next second would be his last breath. Darkness was closing in from above and below simultaneously, the night sky from above, the water from below, and in the middle there was only Peter, sinking, drowning, disappearing. And in that moment, the moment when water was about to reach his lips, the moment when darkness was about to swallow him one final time, Peter screamed with the last air in his lungs, with the last sound his throat could produce, "Lord, save me." 3 words. The most honest prayer in human history. No theology. No beautiful words. No liturgy. No Our Father who art in heaven. No proper sentence structure, no preparation. No rehearsal. Just a raw, naked, unprocessed scream hurled while drowning. Lord, I know you. Save, I cannot save myself. Me, not someone else, me, here, now, the sinking me. This prayer was not beautiful. It was not elegant. It was not inspiring. But it worked. Because God is not looking for proper prayers. God is looking for honest prayers. And Lord save me, spoken with a drowning man's last breath, is the most honest, most powerful, most irresistible prayer in the universe. And Jesus, Matthew tells us, immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. Immediately. Eutheos. In Greek, at once, instantly, without delay. He didn't think about it. He didn't pause for even a second. Peter, I told you so. Why did you look at the waves? Let's first draw a lesson from this, then I'll save you. He did none of that. Immediately. His hand reached out. It seized the sinking man's arm, his hand, his wrist, whatever it could reach, and pulled upward. Out of the water. Out of the darkness. Out of death. That hand, the hand that laid the foundations of the world. The hand that ignited the stars when it said, "Let there be." The hand that made eyes from clay, that touched the leper, that raised the dead, that multiplied bread. That hand caught Peter. And when Peter's hand touched Jesus's hand, the instant it touched, everything changed. The water became firm again. His feet rose back to the surface. His body was supported once more. The man who had been drowning 1 second ago was now standing on the water, held by Jesus's hand, upright. He breathed. A deep, ragged, weeping breath. Air filled his lungs, cold, salty, smelling of storm, but air. Life. breath, existence. Jesus was holding him firmly, safely, unconditionally. And then Jesus spoke. His face was close to Peter's face. His voice, even in the middle of the storm, was calm, warm, and carried a broken smile. You of little faith, why did you doubt? You of little faith. He didn't say faithless. Notice that. If he had said faithless, it would have meant you have no faith at all. But he said little. He said small. You had faith, Peter. You jumped out of the boat, that was faith. You walked on water, that was faith. You took 9 steps, that was faith. But on the 10th step you looked at the waves and faith grew small. It became little. Why? Why did you doubt? Was this a rebuke? Yes. But what kind of rebuke? The kind of father gives his child when he says, why were you afraid when I was right here with you? A reprimand wrapped in love. Peter, I didn't change. The waves grew, but I didn't shrink. The storm intensified, but I didn't weaken. You changed what you were looking at from me to the waves. And what you looked at became what you sank into. The two of them returned to the boat together. And the moment Jesus's foot touched the boat, everything stopped. In an instant. In a single breath. In a single step, the wind, that monster that had howled for hours, whipping the waves, shaking the boat, cut off. As if a hand had reached out and shut the wind's mouth. As if someone had said, be silent, and the atmosphere itself obeyed. The waves, those massive walls of water that had tried to tear the boat apart, rising 3 meters high, capped with foam, flattened. As if someone had laid an enormous sheet of glass on the lake's surface. The water calmed, settled, became like glass. The clouds, that thick blanket that had sealed off the night, hidden the stars, made the darkness absolute, parted. And through them stars. Thousands of stars. And perhaps the first light of the moon striking the newly calmed surface of the lake, painting everything silver. Silence. 1 second ago it had been hell. Wind, waves, screaming, creaking, foam, chaos, fear, death. And now silence. Deep, absolute, sacred silence. The faintest whisper of water lapping against the hull. One last creak of the boat's timber. And the sound of 12 men breathing. Nothing else. The disciples stayed where they were in the boat. Just like that. Motionless. Soaking wet. Trembling. Eyes wide, mouths open, brains trying to process what they had just witnessed. 12 men. Someone made the first move. He knelt. On the wet floor of the boat, onto his knees. Then another. And another. One by one, all together, in a wordless agreement, 12 men fell to the ground before Jesus. And someone, maybe Peter, maybe John, maybe all of them at once said, "Truly you are the Son of God." This sentence was born in that boat. Not in the middle of the storm, but in the silence after it. Not when they saw the miracle, but when they absorbed its meaning. This man was not just a teacher. This man was not just a prophet. This man was not just a miracle worker. This man was the power that created water and walked on it. This man was the authority that designed the storm and silenced it. This man was the being who brought night into existence and said, "It is I" in the darkness. This man was the hand that caught a sinking man without thinking, without questioning, without weighing whether he deserved it immediately. The Son of God. And now let's look at what this story is saying to you. 12 men were in that boat. But the story is defined by 3 characters. First, those who stayed in the boat. 11 disciples. They saw Jesus walking on water. They said, "You are the Son of God." They believed. But they didn't get out of the boat. And people don't usually criticize these 11 men. They acted logically. They stayed safe. Smart. True. But they didn't walk on water. They didn't hold Jesus's hand. They didn't live through that experience. They were safe. But they weren't transformed. 2 Peter. He got out of the boat. He walked. He sank. He was rescued. And people usually criticize Peter. He sank, didn't he? His faith wasn't enough. He looked at the waves. Yes. All true. He sank, his faith was small. He looked at the waves. But Peter did something that 11 others did not. He got out of the boat. 11 people watched the miracle. Peter lived it. 11 people saw Jesus walking on water. Peter walked himself. 11 people stayed safe. Peter sank, but before he sank, he took 9 steps. 9 steps that no human being had ever taken before. 9 steps on water. 9 steps on the impossible. And yes, he sank. But sinking was the prerequisite for Jesus's hand. If he hadn't sunk, he would never have held that hand. If he had stayed in the boat, he would never have felt it. Peter's sinking was not a failure. Peter's sinking was falling into Jesus's arms. And through Jesus. And there are 3 things about Jesus in this story that must not be forgotten. First, he was the one who sent them into the storm. The one who ordered them into the boat. He knew the storm was coming. Did the omniscient Son of God not know the weather? He knew. And he sent them anyway. Because sometimes God sends you into the storm. Not to punish you, but to teach you that you can stand even in the storm, or that you can sink and still be rescued. Second, he came in the darkest moment of the storm. In the 4th watch of the night. After waiting 6 hours. At the moment the disciples said it's over. Jesus's timing is not our timing. We say, "Come now." Jesus says, "I will come at the right time." And the right time most of the time is the darkest moment. Because the light that arrives in the darkest moment is the brightest light. Third, when Peter sank, he caught him immediately. He didn't lecture first. He didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't say, "You deserved this." Immediately, he reached out his hand. And he caught him. Because Jesus saves first and speaks later. He holds first and teaches later. He grasps with love first, and only then gently asks, "Why did you doubt?" And now the final question. Where are you in this story? Are you in the boat safe? Dry? Logical? You have faith, you say, "Yes, Jesus is the Son of God." But you're not getting out of the boat. You're not taking the risk. You're not stepping out. You're watching but not living. Or are you on the water? You've stepped out. You've left the boat. You're walking, and right now it's working. Your faith is carrying you. With every step you're saying this is impossible, but it's happening. And your eyes are on Jesus. Or are you sinking? Did you look at the waves? Did you turn toward the storm? Did faith recede and fear arrive and the water become liquid again and your feet sink and you're in up to your chest and you can't breathe? If you're sinking, you have 3 words. Only 3 words. They don't have to be beautiful. They don't have to be proper. They can be a scream hurled while drowning. Lord, save me. And the hand will come. It will come immediately, without thinking, without questioning, without weighing, do you deserve this, without calculating, was your faith sufficient? It will come immediately. Because Jesus is the God who walks on water to rescue sinking people. And his hand, that hand which ignited the stars and filled the seas and raised the dead, that hand is reaching out right now toward you. Hold on. The fire is dying. But on the Sea of Galilee the storm has ceased, the water has calmed to glass. A boat glides silently across the surface. Inside it are 12 men. All of them soaked. All of them spent. But all of them changed. And Peter, drenched, trembling, eyes bloodshot, is sitting at the edge of the boat. He's looking into his palm. He's looking at his right hand. The hand that Jesus seized just minutes ago. The hand that was pulled from beneath the water. That hand is still warm. Still carrying the touch of Jesus. And Peter is smiling. Yes, he sank. In front of 11 people, in the middle of a storm, having said, "I'll walk too," he sank. But before he sank he walked. And after he sank he was caught. And that hand he never let go of again.